Everyone, welcome back. I said, welcome back. Okay, all right, okay. So, I'd like to welcome back to the stage founder of Music Expo, Loic Mistacci, and his guest, Mr. Otis McDonald, who's right here with us, frantically texting on his phone. They're going to have a wonderful conversation about partnerships with tech companies. I heard Silicon Valley is close by, so tech companies, partnerships, kind of important. So please, if we have your attention, I'd like to welcome back Loic and Otis.
Sorry, I was somebody was like, what time is your thing at? I'm like, right now. You want to take my bag? All right, don't sell it. I don't know where she's taking it to. Don't worry. Well, you're in good hands. All right, cool. All right, I'm back. We have a few seats in the front. If you want to sit, you can actually use this bench. So feel free to be comfortable. Yeah, thanks, Gibbs. So I'm going to do a quick intro, and then we're going to ask questions. And I want to look at you, Joe. And by the way, should I say Otis or Joe?
Which side do you want? You want this side?
Let me look at you. Let me look at you. So, in 2015, Joe released 80 tracks for free under the name of Otis McDonald. Who knows Otis McDonald? All right, this is a good thing that you came. Yeah. The three people who don't know about you, they're here. This is great. So release as copyright-free music exclusively through the YouTube audio library by 2016, so in just a year. This track had been downloaded over 3 million times and appeared in 3.5 million videos all around the world with an astonishing total of 7.6 billion views. Joe represents exactly what Music Expo is about. Creative mind, but also business genius. Joe, welcome.
Hey, thank you for having me. Give it up for Loic, huh? My goodness. If all intros could be that sexy.
Well, you provide the script.
All right.
That's perfect.
What are we talking about?
What are we talking about? Well, I have a few questions for you, and of course, we did full transparency. I share the questions, and you were like, they're good, so I'll stick to the script. But I want to talk to you about your upbringing and how you got into music, because I think it's important to start from the beginning.
Sure. What's happening, guys? How's everybody doing? All right. Yeah, Otis McDonald is the artist name, but my name is Joe Bagale. You can call me Joe. You can call me Jotis. You can call me Jodeci. That's what some people call me. You know. But I'm born and raised in Rochester, New York. But I've been all right. Give it up for Rochester. But I've been living in San Francisco for the last 22 years, and I grew up in a household of music. My father was a high school music teacher. My two older brothers and I were immersed in a lot of different styles of music, just by our parents exposing it to us, mostly on a lot of camping trips growing up. Yeah, we'd sit a lot of long hours in our station wagon camping around the country, and we'd hear anything from Herbie Hancock to Joni Mitchell to Paul Simon to Ennio Morricone, and then eventually my brothers and I all collectively got the bug to start creating music. And there's a 9-year difference between my oldest brother and I, and then my other brother is 5 years older than me. So they both simultaneously started playing guitar at the same time. The only difference is my oldest brother was in college, my other brother was in middle school, and I was 7 years old, and I just wanted to hang with my big brothers. So that's what started it.
And what's your instrument?
Well, I play about 10 different instruments, but the drum set is where it all started. And I started playing the drums when I was 7,
Yeah.
and then eventually went to college for drums. Yeah.
He plays 10 instruments and very talented to many of them. Why Otis McDonald?
up with the name?
Yeah.
So about 10 years ago, like Loic was explaining, I had this opportunity to provide music for the YouTube audio library. And the first 10 tracks that I provided, one of the songs, I had these chord changes laying around, and it reminded me of Michael McDonald. And I had this melody I kept singing, and then I eventually put the melody down with a talk box, so it didn't sound like Michael McDonald, but it needed something, and then I added this like glockenspiel, arpeggiated part, and it reminded me of the song Strawberry Letter 23 by the great Shuggie Otis. And then I started thinking, well, that's kind of cool, because Shuggie Otis is from the Bay Area, and Michael McDonald's not from the Bay Area, but the Doobie Brothers are from the Bay Area, so I'll just make it a tribute to them, and I called it Otis McDonald. And then when YouTube came back and asked me to make more tracks, I started, well, they asked for some hip-hop beats, which I hadn't really made any beats before like that. I'd always loved hip-hop music, particularly artists like Jay Dilla, Madlib, Q-Tip, Dr. Dre, all these cats that would make these iconic records by flipping and sampling and chopping up like soul and funk and rhythm and blues records, which was the kind of stuff I was making under my real name. So then I decided, well, I'll just start making my own samples. It's like my iPhone is full of so many different little ideas. And then when I discovered the concept of just chopping up and sampling, which had been around for ages, I just had never done it, it started to become this really cool composition tool to me. And I was making music that didn't sound like anything I'd ever made before. And so when I started delivering these tracks to YouTube, I thought, well, this doesn't sound like anything I've ever done before. And I'm thinking in my head, well, I might confuse my 5 fans or whatever that I had out there. And so I just thought maybe I put it under a different name, and it was actually my wife. She was like, that song you came up with, Otis McDonald, you should use that as like a band name, because it's kind of sounds like Old McDonald had a farm or something. It's a lot more memorable than Joe Bagale. So I just started putting that music out under Otis McDonald, and then, like Loic said, a year later, there was like 3.5 million videos that had all these Otis McDonald tracks with it. And so I said, well, shoot, I guess that's the name I'm going to go with now.
This is great. This is great. So as mentioned in the introduction, your music has been widely available on YouTube, but also other platforms. I always use it on Instagram. What prompts you to start uploading your music to YouTube as copyright-free music?
Sure. Great question. So to be clear, it's business as usual. You know somebody at the right time, and it happened to be. So in 2012, I was on tour with anybody here familiar with the Grateful Dead? You guys know those guys. So I was in Mickey Hart's band, the drummer, and I was the lead singer, and I played keyboards. And when that tour ended, all the money I'd saved up from being on tour, my wife and I used to have this wonderful wedding down in Mexico. And it was a great celebration with our family. And then we came back and had no money. And has anybody here ever been a touring musician? And so I was always a working musician here in the Bay. And when I went out on tour, I was faced with the issue of coming back from tour and everybody thinking I'm still out on tour. So I was trying to get gigs again. And then this opportunity came my way. A friend of mine that I had gone to college with all those years ago at the Eastman School of Music, he was a part of a company that had recently just been acquired by Google. And they were put to the task of creating something brand new called the YouTube Audio Library, which was just a royalty-free audio library for YouTube creators, so they didn't have to worry about copyright infringement issues. Sound libraries and song libraries have always been around, but this one was really unique to me because, one, this is the biggest music streaming service in the world, still is. 10 years ago it was too, although people don't really think about YouTube that way because you can do all kinds of things on YouTube. Of course, there is YouTube Music, which is like their competitor with Spotify and Apple Music. But that didn't exist back then. And still to this day, more people go to YouTube to look for music than they go to Spotify or Apple or Tidal or anything like that. Because pretty much everything is there. And they reached out to me and they were commissioning me to make music for this library. But the biggest incentive for me was that I was going to get the credit. So that meant if you were going to the YouTube audio library and you're looking for music to put in your videos, you could download it and it would say the artist name next to it. And at the time, it was up to the creator whether they wanted to attribute that credit back to you in their description. Now there's automatic attribution built into it, but back then there wasn't. So what that really said to me is, well, okay, I have this unique opportunity to have my music in front of billions of users, because there are 1 billion users a week on YouTube. And I said to myself, I could either make some I could make some bullshit, which is what a lot of people were doing, to put in the sound library because they're going to hold the good stuff for when they have the opportunity. But nobody knew who I was. And so I thought, well, if I make the best music possible, hopefully some creators would use that in their videos, and hopefully those videos would go viral, and hopefully a percentage of people that saw those videos would want to seek out the full song. And where are they going to go? They're going to go to a YouTube channel, and they're not going to leave the platform. So I created the Otis McDonald thing all exclusively on YouTube. No website, no social media. It all just started right there. And thankfully, there was these huge YouTubers. This guy, anybody here ever heard of H3, the H3 podcast? So before they had the podcast, they had this successful YouTube channel, and they were using my music all the time. And then there was this other guy, iDubbbz. I don't know if he's been canceled at this point, but he was using my music all the time too. And I'm really thankful to these guys because they did actually credit me with a link back to my page. And actually back to where the name came from, the first 10 songs, that song I wrote called Otis McDonald, that was the first taste of it that I got, because in 2014, somebody put out this video of it was this young lady, and she's like smiling at a camera, and then this spider crawls out of her mouth, and then my song came on, and I had put that song on my YouTube channel for Joe Bagale, and then all of a sudden I'm just getting all these notifications, and I'm getting all these subscribers and all these comments, like just overnight success. And this is the viral moment, and I was okay, this works. This is a really unique way to distribute music. Maybe I could lean into this and create a fan base on my YouTube channel, and then start releasing more music that wasn't in the YouTube audio library, and see if people are still on that journey with me. Yeah, and it's been 10 years now.
It's incredible. Yeah. It's incredible. And so part of your answer, you started leaning into my next question, which was, as an artist, how you balance, maintaining artistic integrity while working those big, large tech companies. And as you say, unlike others, you were not kind of giving bullshit music.
I mean, that it would be pretty much the answer to that question. Yeah. I thought, I mean, what is the goal, right? The goal is to get your music heard by as many people as possible. And so rather than make some music that I don't love and just get the paycheck, I wanted to just make something that I cared about and that I could also try to monetize off of, because I can put out my own videos on my own YouTube channel and put whatever visualizations that I want to put with my music, just as I would if I was making a music video. And then I can monetize off of it that way and see who's listening.
And not to some of the tracks you've licensed, you also self-released.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay, well, that's an interesting story.
Yeah.
Well, the internet still is the Wild West, and it certainly was even more so 10 years ago. But so what started happening is that people would comment on my videos saying, hey, so-and-so has released this song under this name. So people were taking my music, they were downloading it from YouTube, from the audio library, and uploading it through like DistroKid or TuneCore to monetize off of it on Spotify and Apple Music as if they created the music. And so I started reaching out to the people that I knew at YouTube. I'm like, hey, man, what is this all about? Like, these people are making money off of my music on a traditional music streaming platform. And they reported it up to the rest of the people at YouTube and Google, but unfortunately, the audio library was kind of just small potatoes to them. So nobody really did anything. And part of my contract was well, I'm not supposed to put this music up on Spotify, but if these people could do it, why can't I do it? So in 2018 was my first time ever releasing music on Spotify, and I put up every single track that I had made for YouTube as all these different albums, and they haven't asked me to take it down, and I've been making streaming royalties off of it. 5 minutes remaining. Thank you.
Cool. No. We started late, so you okay if we go an extra 5? Okay. Sorry about that. I had technical difficulties.
You have to cut me off too. I'll just elaborate.
Do I have to cut him out? No. Okay. Cool. So could you tell us the percentage of your revenues coming from those partnerships with those companies?
Well, it's changed over the years. I'd say pre-pandemic. So just full transparency, after the work with YouTube, Meta went and before it was Meta, it was just Facebook, started their own sound collection, and they reached out to me and asked if I'd like to provide, and I was like, absolutely. The more the merrier, because also, having these deadlines is actually what really helped induce the creativity, and I never really knew what I was capable of because I didn't have these deadlines to do it. And so when I started working with Meta, and that was in 2019 is when I started working with them. At that point, between the different work I would do with the tech companies, it was about 80% of the revenue I was making was just in these partnerships.
80%.
80%. I wasn't playing gigs, but I was taking projects here and there to produce other artists. But then, during the pandemic, all those projects stopped, because the whole world stopped. Yeah. But I reached out to Meta and asked, can I release this music? Because at that point, I'd made about 110 tracks for them. I was like, can I release this music on Spotify? Because the tech companies aren't in the business of music publishing. They just want music cleared for their platform so people can use it and there's no copyright infringement. And they were like, absolutely. So they licensed all the music back to me in perpetuity. And then I looked at something like Spotify and I said, well, shoot, that looks really similar to Instagram. There's likes, there's follows. It's all the same thing. And I see all this effort that everybody puts into Instagram, making these really elaborate beat-making videos, which I also do that too. But I was like, man, I've got 100 and something tracks right now. If I look at that as releasing one song every week, then I could pitch every single song for a playlist, an editorial playlist, and therefore I could trigger this algorithm and get into release radar and maybe just start boosting my streams and supplement some of this income I've lost and start making money off of streaming. Because there is all this information out there that is telling artists that you cannot make money off of streaming platforms, and that's not true. If you were signed to a major record label or a major publishing deal, then maybe you're not going to make money off of it. Because as we all know, the labels have still to this day, I mean, they own all the equity in these companies, right? So they're making money off of just being owners of Spotify, but then they're making hundreds of millions of dollars every quarter, and nobody holds them accountable. So it doesn't matter how much you increase the streaming revenue. If you're signed to a deal, they're just going to take more money, and nobody's going to hold them accountable. But these streaming companies are kind of built for independent artists, so if you can figure out how to make it work, well, then you can actually make something. Would I like to make more money? Hell yeah, who wouldn't? But in the last 4 years since the pandemic, I've been able to get it to a place where I have, on average, around between 200 and 300,000 monthly listeners, which equates to about 1 million streams a month. Now, I'm not going to tell you what that is, but you can look it up and see what 1 million streams is. And, living in San Francisco, it's not enough to survive here, but it sure as hell pays for my recording studio down the street. Yeah. And if I'm able to get it to 1 million streams in a few years, what can I do if I actually maybe start paying for ads and trying to figure that out? Because it's all been really grassroots. It's just people using my music in their videos. And to Instagram and Meta's, to their credit, they actually built in automatic attribution. So if you're on Instagram and you see a story or a reel like New York Times Cooking or ESPN or something, you might hear one of my tracks in there, and it will say the track name and the artist name, which is a clickable link that takes you to a page that shows you all the thousands of different videos that use that song, and then you can click right through and get to Otis McDonald. And that's how all these artists like Aloe Black found me. He found me that way. That's how DJ Jazzy Jeff found me, all through Instagram. And now I get to work with these guys, and I'm still, you know, making revenue off of the streaming royalties. And
so I'm going to take a second because I want to summarize some of the key points. You gave some good gems here.
Yeah, okay.
So one, you can make money on streaming, okay? But the way he approached it, he had you literally have an integrated kind of, you partner with Meta, your music is there, link, the music is on Spotify, and so you can really benefit from kind of this virtuous circle of being at different places. And I think it's important that you think when you release music or projects that you really tap into those different places. But also the fact that they gave you back the rights to distribute this is amazing.
That was a pretty cool
So
move.
don't be afraid of asking. You create the music. I mean, businesses can be shocked sometimes, but ask for your music. Ask for support. Never be afraid of getting control of your music so you can use it in multiple places. This is fantastic. And also you can see that he's a living example of diversifying revenues, which is something we're big here at Music Expo. We have a few more minutes, so I'm going to go quickly through other questions. But one I wanted to ask you is, wrap up. So I'm going to ask two more questions because it's important. First, go follow Otis McDonald on Instagram and YouTube. And every week, for some time, every week he was publishing his process. And he's going to speak about it later today. But there's a lot of talk about generative AI. And I'm sure you're using the tools, but you are a generative human, you know? So how do you see the relationship between musicians and this kind of new technologies, knowing that you are so prolific and you have your workflow? I mean, you're like a machine.
Well, the thing we got to remember is technology is inherent to us, right, as humans. It's not the other way around. And I think a lot of people will abuse the technology, particularly generative AI, and back to the record labels. I think those will be the ones that probably abuse it the most, and music supervisors. And unfortunately, you hear all these lawsuits that are happening against companies like Udio and Suno, and those lawsuits are all being ran by the record labels, man. I mean, because they're probably building their own technology. They've built these businesses off of the backs of artists, right? And why wouldn't they want to create their own artists that they don't have to pay any money to and they could take it all? Sorry, I didn't mean to get deep into that world. But where it could be useful, all right, I told you how I kind of created the Otis thing with sampling, right? Making my own samples, chopping them up. Well, if you dig deep into sampling culture, I mean, one of the art forms in it is digging, right? Digging in crates to get the most obscure sample that nobody else has, right? Well, I've been playing around with something like Udio, where I create something with the same prompt that maybe you write, and it creates two different things. The prompt, we could use the same prompt, but it will create two completely different things. And then I can take that thing and throw it in Serato Sample and chop it up and find some information that helps trigger what I do on the instruments, and it becomes the conductor. So that, to me, is really cool, because now I'm the only person that has this little creation. And a lot of times when I use samples, I'm using it, like I said, as a conductor to inform everything I do on all these different instruments. And a lot of times I just take the sample out at the end, because now I've just created all this music around it, and now I'm taking it out, and it's not there anymore. There's no. Does that sound like cheating? No, hell no. I mean, music is interactive, right? And that's what it's all about. It's trying to figure out, if you're a one-man band or you're a solo musician just trying to produce records, you're just trying to figure out ways to make it feel interactive and reactive in the same way it does when you're with a group of musicians jamming. So.
All right, one last question, and answer very briefly. What would be the one advice you want to give artists if they want to partner with tech companies today?
The one piece of advice, if you want to, don't be precious. Don't be precious about your music. I know that seems kind of dark to say. I obviously love the things that I create, but it's when you start to become precious about something is when you can't finish it, and that triggers procrastination. And I'm so thankful to be a father, and I have 2 children that depend on me to succeed because it allows me to not be precious and actually just make and create based on what it is that I've been working on my whole life. Like, I rely on my chops. I'm not sitting there overthinking it. I'm just focusing on getting it done. And it's good to have deadlines. So,
So if you want to see Joe break down his creative process, he's going to be doing a masterclass on this stage at 4 p.m. Joe, thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks, buddy. Sorry, we ran a little late.
No, it's good.
Ladies and gentlemen, Lois Mithrachi and Otis McDonald. Okay. Time to get your legs moving. We have stage 6 opening up downstairs. 10 biggest mistakes songwriters make and how to avoid them. We have stage 3, getting started with Dolby Atmos. Also on stage 2, we have setting up a room from 0, or as Gene Wormer would say, 0.0. And right here, coming up, we have Beyond Streaming, alternative outlets for your music. So you have 3 minutes to decide, report to which stage you want to be at, and we'll get started momentarily.